The rhythmic hum of the train filled the cabin, punctuated by the occasional murmur of distant conversations. Michael adjusted his cufflinks, glancing out the window as the cityscape blurred into the countryside. Dressed in a tailored navy suit, he exuded the quiet confidence of a man accustomed to control. He had taken this train countless times before, always alone, always composed. Today, however, fate had other plans. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "Michael?" He turned, a slow smile spreading across his face as Linda slid into the seat beside him. She was stunning as always, her braided hair neatly pinned, her perfume subtle yet intoxicating. There was an elegance in the way she moved, her presence commanding attention without effort. "I almost missed the train," she said, breathless. "You didn't tell me you'd be traveling today." Michael's mind worked quickly. He had, in fact, not planned to see Linda today. His schedule, so carefully orchestrated, was not meant to intersect with hers on this train. But he could not let her see the flicker of unease crossing his face. "A last-minute trip," he said smoothly. "Business, you know how it is." She studied him for a moment, then smiled, leaning in to press a brief kiss against his cheek. "You work too much." Before he could respond, the cabin door slid open again. A woman stepped inside, pausing for a fraction of a second when she met Michael's gaze. His stomach tightened. Sophia. Of all the people, of all the trains, why did it have to be her? She hesitated, her dark eyes flickering between him and Linda. Then, with a controlled breath, she took the seat across from them. Michael forced himself to remain still, though his mind raced. He had carefully balanced these two lives, keeping them separate, ensuring neither woman ever suspected the other. But now they sat mere feet apart, and he was trapped in the middle. Linda smiled at Sophia, unaware of the invisible tension tightening the air. "Traveling alone?" Sophia nodded, her lips pressed together. She was quieter than Linda, her beauty more understated. Deep brown eyes, a calm presence, the kind of woman who spoke little but noticed everything. Michael willed himself to appear relaxed, but he could feel Sophia's gaze piercing through his carefully constructed facade. She knew. Maybe she had always known. The train lurched forward, beginning its journey. The low rumble of movement filled the cabin, but inside their small space, an uncomfortable silence settled. Michael cleared his throat, desperate to regain control. "It's a surprise to see you here, Sophia," he said, his voice measured. "Is it?" she replied, tilting her head. Linda looked between them, frowning slightly. "Do you two know each other?" Michael opened his mouth, but Sophia beat him to it. "Yes," she said simply. A single word, yet it carried the weight of an earthquake. Linda's expression shifted, curiosity laced with the first stirrings of suspicion. Michael felt the air constrict around him, his carefully woven lies beginning to unravel. The train sped forward, but for Michael, time had begun to slow. Michael felt the shift in the air, subtle but undeniable. The moment Sophia confirmed knowing him, Linda's posture changed. She didn't recoil or lash out, but Michael knew her well enough to recognize the flicker of doubt crossing her face. He had spent years mastering the art of deception, but now, trapped in this confined space with both women, he felt the walls closing in. He forced a chuckle, aiming for nonchalance. "Small world, huh?" Sophia's lips curved slightly. Not quite a smile, not quite a challenge. Very small. Linda turned to Michael, her brow slightly furrowed. "How do you two know each other?" Michael's pulse quickened. His mind raced through possible responses, but each one felt like a thin thread stretched over a widening chasm. If he downplayed it too much, it would seem suspicious. If he overexplained, he risked contradicting himself. Before he could answer, Sophia leaned back in her seat, folding her arms. "We met some time ago," she said, her voice measured. "Through mutual acquaintances." Michael's stomach tightened. She was giving him a lifeline, a chance to control the narrative. But the way she said it, the way she watched him, made it clear she wasn't doing it for his benefit. Linda nodded slowly. "Oh, you never mentioned her, Michael." He exhaled, crafting his response carefully. It didn't seem important at the time. Sophia's eyes flickered with something unreadable, and Michael knew he had just made a mistake. He had reduced her presence in his life to something insignificant. And yet, she didn't contradict him. Linda turned to Sophia, offering a polite smile. "Where are you headed?" Sophia hesitated for just a moment. "Same destination as you, I suppose." Michael suppressed the urge to run a hand through his hair. He had always been careful, ensuring neither woman knew too much about his routine. But now, it was clear that Sophia had figured out more than he'd realized. The train conductor entered the cabin briefly, checking tickets. Michael used the distraction to regain his composure. But as soon as the conductor left, the silence returned, pressing against his ribs like an iron grip. Linda shifted slightly, glancing at Michael. "Strange coincidence," she murmured. Sophia met Michael's gaze directly. "Isn't it?" Michael forced a smile. "Life has a way of throwing unexpected surprises." Sophia tilted her head. "Yes. And some surprises change everything." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Linda didn't speak, but Michael could sense the wheels turning in her mind. She was perceptive, always had been. And right now, she was beginning to piece together a puzzle she hadn't realized existed. The train rocked gently as it sped forward, but for Michael, the journey was becoming treacherous. He wasn't sure how much longer he could maintain control before everything unraveled. The rhythmic clatter of the train against the tracks had become a dull, oppressive noise in Michael's ears. Each second felt stretched, the weight of the moment pressing against his chest. Linda hadn't spoken in a while. She sat upright, her arms crossed, her gaze distant yet focused, assessing, calculating. Sophia, on the other hand, was watching him with quiet intensity, her expression unreadable. She had always been the more reserved of the two, but now, she held the power. She had no reason to lie, no reason to protect him. She could tear everything apart with just a few words. Michael shifted, clearing his throat. "So, Linda," he started, forcing a casual tone. "How's work been? I know you had that big presentation last week." She turned her head slowly, her eyes meeting his with unsettling sharpness. "It went well." A pause. "But I'm more interested in this unexpected reunion." Sophia exhaled softly, shaking her head. "Michael, why are you still pretending?" His stomach lurched. The directness of her words struck harder than he expected. There was no more maneuvering, no more sidestepping. The moment he had feared was finally here. Linda uncrossed her arms, resting her hands on her lap. "I was wondering the same thing." Michael's pulse pounded in his ears. He had always thought himself clever, able to control situations, manipulate outcomes. But sitting between these two women, he felt stripped of every illusion he had built. He swallowed. "Linda, Let me guess," she interrupted, her tone calm but firm. "Sophia's just an old acquaintance. Or maybe a distant cousin. Or is this another small world coincidence?" Sophia let out a quiet laugh, though there was no amusement in it. "He's good at that, isn't he?" Linda turned to Sophia. "How long?" Sophia hesitated. Not out of uncertainty, but out of something deeper, a quiet deliberation, as if deciding whether to deliver the final blow. She looked at Michael, as if giving him one last chance to be honest. Michael lowered his gaze. He had no escape. "A year," Sophia answered. "Maybe more." Linda inhaled sharply. A muscle in her jaw twitched, but she didn't lash out. Instead, she nodded, as if confirming something she had already begun to suspect. Michael opened his mouth, grasping for something, anything, that could salvage this. "Linda, I never meant." "Don't," she said, her voice steady. "Don't insult me with apologies you don't mean." Silence engulfed the cabin. The train continued forward, but for Michael, the journey was already over. Linda stood abruptly. "I need air." Without another word, she turned and walked out of the compartment, leaving behind the shattered remnants of trust. Michael exhaled, running a hand down his face. When he looked up, Sophia was still watching him. She leaned in slightly, voice low. You thought you could keep everything separate, didn't you? He had no response. Sophia stood, picking up her bag. You never really had control, Michael. You just had time. And now you're out of it. With that, she walked out, leaving him alone. The train sped on, but for the first time, Michael felt like he was going nowhere.